What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be talking about Week 12 in the Overwatch League, the second week of Summer Showdown Qualifiers. But first, before we get into that, to thank everybody for joining me, all of you guys who have subscribed and have been checking out the channel, thank you very much. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Everybody that's new, thanks for joining me. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week. Depending on what's going on, this week's we might have an extra episode in here because we have the knockouts, and I usually do one on Saturday to just give a little preview of the knockout round itself. This week I'll have probably an extra episode somewhere coming in set somewhere around Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, before the matches start in the NA region. If you could hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell, it'll tell you when I got my content coming up. That would be fantastic. All right, let's dive into it. Okay, there's some news that we are going to discuss, not on this episode. I wanted to flesh out a little bit, but I saw that the Department of Justice is doing an investigation into the Overwatch League with their soft cap system. Now, this is very complicated and a lot of things going on, and it's going to take a little bit of time to talk about, but it's something that I want to get into a little bit, but it involves salaries and all this stuff, and I want to read a little bit more. Obviously, it was a holiday weekend. I was watching matches. I was focusing more on that, and, family stuff and the other kind of things that are entailed with that kind of thing, barbecues and 4th of July things, and getting yelled at for watching matches on my phone. But that's beside the point. But anyway, let's get into the action. So this week we had some things flesh out. We had a couple of great matches, a lot of kind of man matches, teams punching up, and some teams just showing their dominance still. So let's go over a little bit of it. Real quick review of the schedule, and then we'll dive into some of the matches that I wanted to talk about. Here's the results for the week. Shock beat Paris 3-1 on Friday. Also on Friday, Atlanta 3-0's Washington. Over to APAC, Fusion come back with some of their new guys, not all of them. Beat Guangzhou 3-0. Shanghai smokes the Seoul Dynasty, just annihilates them 3-0. Paris beats Vancouver 3-0, no breadsticks again. Dallas in a close one against Florida with Checkmate on main tank. We'll get to that in a little bit. Wins 3-2. Houston beats the Shock 3-1. Seoul in a close one against Guangzhou wins 3-2. Shanghai destroys another team in APAC in the Fusion 3-0. And then Dallas in a very, very closely fought match with Atlanta wins 3-2. And the Shock denies breadsticks again. Very close on the breadsticks in this one for Vancouver, but denied. And the Justice continue the Mayhem's woes with a thrashing 3-0. But yeah, so that's the schedule. We'll talk about the standings at the end of the episode, but a couple of matches I wanted to talk about. First, let's talk about APAC really quick. Shanghai is the best team by far, bar none. I don't care what you say. You are not going to make me think otherwise. Everybody else is fighting for second place. Shanghai took Seoul, and after the week Seoul had last week, where we were like, maybe Seoul can be the second team, give Shanghai a battle. Nope, not even close. This match was as bad as I've seen a beating in a long time. That was just sheer dominance. Fate has proven himself as a main tank, and he has just taken it to another level. You add Lip in there on comfort picks, and the rest of the team, Void, Izayaki, Li Jiegong, just going ham on things. A ruthless killer. I think at one point he had 94% of the team's damage or something like that in one of these matches. I forget exactly which one. He was just out of control. The Fusion come back. They look better. EKO was okay on Sombra, doing some things. They were doing, obviously, APAC's running a lot of trees for Sombra, things like that. NA's running a lot different comp, which is going to be fun to see in when we hit the Summer Showdown finals, how these collide, so to speak, these two styles. Really no resistance from, Seoul had a little resistance from Guangzhou. They didn't have the match in control. It was, I think they were a little boomed from getting buried by Shanghai, and what I saw, they had to come back and reverse sweep. It turned out to be a decent match. It looked like Guangzhou was going to bury them. Profit decided, no, I'm not doing this two matches in a row. Screw you guys. We're going to win this. And Profit took over, and everything got back on track, and the better team won, as we expected. Philly got outclassed by Shanghai. Yeah, there wasn't a ton of matches. I think there was only 4 matches in APAC. It was a light week, but yeah, because I think they're saving. There's going to be more matches next week because we have a Shanghai homestand because they need that. They need a homestand and home field advantage on top of everything. Anyway, but APAC is just the middle is kind of. You're seeing Philly and Seoul, I think, are going to be the 2 teams fighting it out here. Didn't see Poco, at least I didn't recall seeing him in the matches. I watched them, obviously early in the morning. And I think that could make a difference. I was expecting him to play, but I forgot that he had the quarantine thing and all that stuff. Next week, he'll be in. We'll see what happens. But I think that right now we're looking at Seoul and Philly clawing it out for the second spot. And I think you're probably going to see the spark in 3. Maybe Chengdu a little bit. There's a little weird stuff going on in Chengdu. We talked about that on the last episode. So I don't know what's going on there. Guangzhou and New York. New York is decent enough. They're not terrible. They're playing well, but you lose to Guangzhou. I mean, what do you... Ugh. Anyway, that region's just a mess other than Shanghai. And like I said, there's separation between Philly. I think Philly and Seoul, and then you have I would say New York, Hangzhou, and Chengdu, maybe in another bunch, and then the Valiant or whatever they are. And Guangzhou is somewhere floating around there, could beat somebody. They show up. They have good players. I mean, Choi Se-won is great, and Karib is decent enough. Krong was like a Rookie of the Year candidate last year, but they're kind of a mess. But anyway, let's hit NA and talk about some matches over there. I could talk about the Seoul Guangzhou match, but I wanted to talk about a couple of key matches that we had on our key matches. Obviously, we had Shanghai and Philly, and that was a bloodbath. But Shanghai just demolished them, and the Sombra and Diff in that was, yeah. I think EQO, he has some good mechanics and good things going on with that, but Limp has been the best mechanical Sombra. Terrible on the ultimates, and he's starting to get the ultimate timing down and not just yeeting it and hitting one, making the necessary play or, the smart play instead of trying to do a hero play with the EMP. So you got that going on. But I wanted to talk a little bit about San Francisco and Houston and the best match of the week and maybe one of the year, Dallas and Atlanta. Now, the shock in Houston, I think Houston is the Shock's nemesis this year. They just have their number. You can say what you want about the Shock looking bad and looking this and looking that. They're going in 2-2, all of the things to into the last week of the season. They might have to wait on things. Currently, they're on the cutoff at 2-2. They're the 16. They have a 0 map differential, which kind of is bad. There's some teams that could sneak up on them. Their worst case scenarios is if the Gladiators go 2-0, they're out, and you still have some chances here. You got Paris at 3-1 on the top. They're in already. Houston's 2-0, Boston's 2-0, Toronto's 2-0, and Dallas is 2-0. One of those teams are going to lose something somewhere, but it's hard to say. We'll talk more about that later. But San Francisco, their nemesis is Houston. Now, they came out and they looked really strong as they did when they played Paris and they beat the crap out of them earlier in the week. That looked like San Francisco. And I was expecting a little bit more from Paris. Paris didn't play bad. It was just San Francisco played San Francisco-style Overwatch is really what it was. They took it to them. They were playing their style. They came out and they did what they had to do. Now, in this match, it started off that way on Control, and San Francisco beat the Outlaws pretty bad, and then we come into one of the most insane Junkertown maps that I've seen in a bit, and this was the difference maker in the whole match. I think this boomed San Francisco and turned it around confidence-wise and play-wise for the Outlaws to take the rest of the match. It was close. In fact, the Shock was doing a lot to slow down what Houston was trying to do on their attack. They got they got the card in overtime, Houston, and it was drawn out and it was long. There were fights that, just a lot of fights. I think there was at one point, before they got to the first checkpoint, they had, I think there was like 3 fights, and Houston didn't necessarily lose them, all of them, but it slowed them down enough. And there were a couple of key moments. We also saw Violet on main support most of this match. I'm on the fence about that. But him and Twilight on the field at the same time, I think you're getting better calls. It's not that he's better mechanically or skill-wise than you're going to have with FD God, but I think the calls that were missing from Moth between Violet and Twilight on the field is making a difference somewhat for this team. Obviously, there's a lot of issues going on communication-wise here, I think, with them. And rotation-wise, it's a merry-go-round. Now, we said at the beginning of the year, it works for San Francisco. I'm starting to see it not. I would like to see them have some kind of set thing, but DPS rotations, it never bothered me. They never will. It's a whole separate animal. But they're rotating in Super and Smurf and Violet and FD God and Twilight and this whole revolving door thing. And I don't like the synergy we're getting with some of it. It's just, there's miscommunication and misplay because you're not used to playing a lot of playstyles, and you end up having Choi Hyobin being the only constant on the field, in the match, on the server, whatever you want to call it. And you can see that there are certain times where the communication is screwing him up, but he played a lot better in this match than he did, at least in the beginning part, than he had been in the last couple of weeks. But Houston here, they did some different things. Now, they tried a comp, and it did not work to try and stop Dallas, or San Francisco. San Francisco took the card in with 3:15 in the time bank, which is a lot. The Shock got into a groove, and they were running really, really well. So now we get into the overtime. The Shock kind of fumble a little bit here in that they lose a couple of team fights, and they lose them early, and they give the Outlaws an opportunity where they can take more ground than they really, really should have. And one of the things that I noticed in this whole match this whole map was Piggy was getting a lot of value out of his fluxes when he was playing Sigma. He was doing a lot of things. It wasn't necessarily getting the kills, but it was stopping some of the things that the Shock were trying to do with Reinhardt. Just even sometimes just soloing Super on the Reinhardt and just getting him up off the cart, getting him out of the fray. And having just that advantage helped them out. And in fact, the San Francisco eventually switches to Orisa on their overtime attack. But San Francisco did not do a good job of but they just got caught out a few times. There were a lot of just ridiculously weird plays and things that caused the Outlaws to take the cart in way too far with 1 minute in the time bank. I think they gave them just too much leeway, and that they were losing fights, being a little overly aggressive instead of playing a little bit more passive sometimes. They got a couple of times you have Glister getting caught out a couple of times on Sim, and then he got nailed a couple times on Doomfist. He made some big plays on Doomfist, though, and don't get me wrong. He was a big factor in stopping them on their attack when he switched over to Doom. But there was a couple times where he got caught out. But some of that was just the Outlaws playing well. Dante was playing May, and he was doing really well. I liked what Crimzo was doing. He's just, every week he seems to be getting better and better. He's fantastic on the BAP. And he made some big plays. A couple of times he got shut out. In fact, one of the things that San Francisco did well was they walled him off at a crucial moment, and he couldn't get back to the team to help them get past that door. The one big thing that I noticed when it came to San Francisco's attempt was the Outlaws did a good job, much like San Francisco did on the Outlaws' initial attack, of slowing them down and eating clock. Maybe getting one pick or two here or there, or forcing the Shock to back up. They made it so that they could get this time bank under control. And by the time they got to the door on the first checkpoint in San Francisco, they were already in overtime. Now, they started riding the cart in. They win a team fight. and then they look like they're going to take it in. And there was a TP play with a Twilight where he pops Convalescence, and they just get nailed. And then they had no healing, and the Outlaws turn the fight, and literally like 2 inches away from taking the map and potentially making this a blowout in the favor of the Shock. The Outlaws turn the tides, and they literally turn the tide of the whole match after this. So they stop them, win the map, and they just demolish them after that. I mean, it was a pretty quick two more maps, and they just finished off the Shock. What does this leave the Shock? I don't think the Shock are bad. I just think they need to stop rotating all of these people in. I know they're trying to find some kind of identity without Moth there on the main support and trying to get Violet in, and Twilight's better at certain things and this and that and all the what have you, but it's causing a lot of issues. I think they need to pick a main tank at some point too. In the years past, I like the rotating in and out of Super and Smurf, but right now it just does not look like it's working right. I don't know how to put it mildly. I mean, I would have Super in a little bit more right now, just because you're running a lot of the Rhine comps, you're running Orisa comps, you're not doing much of the monkey stuff, at least on this side of the on the west side. Maybe if you were in APAC, where they're running a lot of the Sombra Tracer dive with Monkey, Diva, and that kind of thing. You're getting here in North America, it's going to be either the Rush comps or Poke comps. So, the Rush comps with, it seems like Sim May or Reaper, or you have a Doom, something like that. A lot of just, sometimes, they're running Orisa Sigma, a lot. There's a lot of Sim, and the TPing and all that stuff is integral. And I think it's taken some of these guys a little bit of time to adjust it. Like, what the hell's going on with that? But the Shock's problems, they just need to figure out a lineup and kind of stick with it, because they haven't made a tournament yet, and they're on the verge of not being able to make this one. So we'll see what happens there. Outlaws look great. Now they just have to start finishing the job, not just on regular season matches. They need to go into the knockouts, take somebody out, and move on. This team has to, the way they've been playing, I want them to make at least one final. I think that they're due to do that. Their team has been playing really good. Django and Piggy are great. I think Piggy's an unsung hero on this team. And, Dante is doing his thing, and Happy, the DPS line's great. Crimzo's also an unsung guy on this team. I think his play has been elevating them. He's been keeping that tank line alive and just making crucial plays with amp matrices and whatnot to keep them in position to win all these games. They just have to take it one step further now and move into playoffs and games like that, scenarios like that, where they can, get some more points and continue to stay up in the top of the standings and show people that they're for real, and not just, in the regular season they're beating teams, blah, 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 and then going off and losing in a playoff round. They need to take the next step now. So some other things before we get into the last match I want to talk about for the week, which was the banger, the Atlanta-Dallas. Okay, so the Mayhem have continued their streak of losing. Oh boy, it's bad. They put Checkmate in for Oj, which Oj, I guess, is taking his vacation now, which he does every year for a couple of weeks. And also, they lost 2 games last week, so they might as well try something, because they were already out with map differential and all that stuff. So I don't know what to think of this. Everybody, it was kind of fun, I guess, with him coming in, and he was like raging on Reinhardt and swinging the hammer like Bumper. End of the day, though, it was not that great, the Reinhardt play. They kind of tricked Dallas with the Orisa stuff. And for a guy that's playing DPS, going in and playing Orisa, just learning the other mechanic stuff is what you need to do. I mean, the shooty, you can do that, right? You're not in there for that part of the kit, but it keeps you alive and all that. You just need to know the fortifies and the halts and all that kind of stuff. It worked for a little bit, and they looked like they were getting back on track, but they lost to Dallas, and then they got boomed by Washington. This team, they need, I don't know what else to say. You could say they need a break, but they had a break between June Joust and Summer Showdown when they went 1-3, and now they're 0-4. They lost 7 matches in a row. Any chance of them getting into the 9 slot is going to be difficult. You're looking at possibly them being the 10th best team, and right now they're playing like it. They're not playing very well. They're not playing coordinated. They're not playing the communications off as it has been. Even last year, it reared its head a few times with C9s and, mistimed ults and things like that. Now it's like magnified. And now they're mentally out of it. They just need to regroup and figure something out. Hopefully, in the Countdown Cup, they can at least have a showing and potentially try and get into that 9 spot because they have enough talented players on this team to be able to do something. But we'll talk about more of that later. And speaking of teams that are on the opposite side of this, so let's talk about Atlanta-Dallas. Now, this match was unfrickin' believable. From the start, you could tell it was going to be good. Dallas came out, Atlanta came out. They were running the that standard, well, kind of standard now, with the Rhine, the Diva, or Sigma, and then you're running the Sim. I believe they were running Sim and May, and also Sim and Doom for Dallas, which worked. And they would switch to the May. They kind of switch in and out with that. Occasionally they would switch off of Sim, but then end up going back. But they won the first map, close first map. There were times where I think if you're Atlanta, that was your chance to have taken this whole match was in the first map on Nepal, and they had a really good opportunity towards the end, and it faltered. But you know what? They proved how to break Dallas. You could say that the Mayhem did, but I think that the Mayhem just tricked them. They had a different guy in main tank. You're thinking Oj and all that kind of stuff. All week long you're preparing, and then midweek the Mayhem dropped the bomb of the Checkmate's going to play main tank, which I thought was a meme at first, and I didn't talk about it. I thought they were joking, and then I realized, oh wait, they're not joking. But anyway, back to this match. Now, what was established from the start was Gator was on fire. That tank line for Atlanta right now, Gator and Hawk, are playing unbelievably. Yeah, and you had Fearless and you had Hanbin you're going up against, and they were toe-to-toe with them the whole match, making big plays. Gator was unbelievable in this match. There were so many fights that he won for them. Just key shatters and blocks of shatters, and also a couple of times I noticed, like after the first map, and a couple of times in there, it seemed like he almost went in and took the heat and took the death and as they were kind of working him when he did a shatter or whatever, or look, he was getting close to a shatter or something, the Fuel would focus on him, and he kind of figured out, and the Rain, I think, figured out that they focus on the main tank first, and they kind of let him die, sort of, like a sacrificial lamb, and then they took care of the rest of the fight. As these guys were focusing on him, they would take out the back line, and with Edison and Pelican doing serious work too. Both of those guys are great. This whole game, there were just key plays from everybody at certain times. There was a point where there were some points on the first couple maps where Pelican was doing some work on Doomfist too. He was just proving to be, a low-key Rookie of the Year candidate here. Let's be honest. Maybe not even low-key at this point. He is looking fantastic. I thought he was going to be up there. I thought Mag was going to be up there too. Mag has been playing a little bit better, but I just like the way Pelican's playing with this team. They have good coordination together. They're doing what they need to do to get into positions to beat teams like Dallas, which they came very close to doing. And now, the one place where Atlanta absolutely owned the Fuel was on Route 66. They got the third fastest time going in. They just rolled them. Now, they came and rolled out with Torb, and that throws people off. And the turret placements and stuff that the Pelican was doing was great. And then you had Edison playing the Reaper to start and just cleaning up all the business and doing some of the dirty work in there. And, of course, Gator doing what he does and he took control of the map for a little bit. He had some key shatters in this game. Like I said, he was just unbelievable on this part. He was just owning Fearless for a little bit. It feels like at times guys really want to take it to Fearless because he is the best tank in the league right now. So Fearless is getting worked pretty hard, and he still makes it through and makes big plays. And he did a couple times in this, but it was not enough. Where Dallas just crumbled under the foot of the Rain on this, and they held them pretty badly. I think they got the first checkpoint, and by the time the second checkpoint, but it just didn't work out. They were just crushing any kind of dive attempt that they were trying to make with the Torbjorn and Reaper. And then later, when they switched up to Sim, they did a great job. And Dallas goes into the next map, and they just they destroy Atlanta. The next two maps now, these are kind of destruction-y things. Atlanta had opportunities on Anubis too to take advantage and win some of these key fights, but Dallas was just playing the teleporter game a lot better than Atlanta was. It just key pickoffs and stuff like that. Just rotations with that teleporter are key in this stage right now when you're using the sim. And Dallas is proving to be, obviously, once again, one of the forerunners of this. And they've played two matches. Yeah, they were both 3-2s and they won. But as they get better with the meta, and it moves into week 3 and then the knockout rounds, and then you get to the finals, they just look better and better and better when they start perfecting something. And they have two very versatile DPS players that can switch off of sim onto something else, or off of, say, May onto Doomfist or whatever. They're just interchangeable and they can do whatever they want. And Atlanta was having some troubles with that on there. Atlanta won Eichenwald, had a couple of unbelievable plays taking the cart in and stopping Dallas. The couple of key plays, or one of them was a Gator play where he knocked Doha, who came out of an ice block, and it had Blizzard as Dallas was going to take it in and potentially tie the map up. He shattered him out of the Blizzard. So that they won that map. And then after all that miraculous play and everything, Dallas just put the clamps on them and went fucking just whole hog and buried them on Busan. There were a couple of times where Atlanta had chances on the temple part, but Dallas just came in there and destroyed them. And it is a loss for Atlanta, but it isn't, in a way. Dallas got out of this week 2-0 by the skin of their teeth, but it wasn't by luck. It was by the way they played. They figured out how to make this work, and with their DPS and Fielder and Jexay, who was an unsung hero, and I didn't really talk too much about him. He had some key boops and key plays. He was dying early sometimes, but a couple of times his sound barriers and his boops were the key for them to win where they shouldn't have been winning team fights. And it just goes to show how well this team is. And Fearless, of course, was fearless, and Hanbin played exceptionally well too, had a couple of big bombs. But I don't think if you're Atlanta, you could come out of this going, we lost, it was terrible. And you come out of this going, look, we stood toe-to-toe with them. We could have very well won this game 3-1, and we know how to beat them, and we have a style of play now where we can, the two tanks that are main tanks that we're using in this side of the bracket, so to speak, are the two that our main tank is most comfortable on, and that's Orisa and Reinhardt. And the rest of the team, Iris, Masa, they were all playing great. So they are probably right now, I look at them as the number two team in this region to go into the Summer Showdown. I think we might get Dallas, and what I'm getting at is we might get Dallas and Atlanta again going to Hawaii, the way it looks. The Gladiators are up and down. The Shock are same thing. One match they're good, one match they're bad. You have wildcard teams like Paris, Toronto, Boston. I don't know if those teams are going to make it. There's some teams there are a couple of teams there that are playing above their level, punching up, so to speak. Paris is one of them. But you know what? The moves that they made, Paris, I think that they're here to stay. They're in the knockouts. And I think they're going to be dangerous because Vestola and Dredro were two key pickups, and they're working out fantastic for them. I think those two guys are making a big difference, especially Vestola. They lost to the Shock, but you know what? The Shockers, like I keep saying, the Shock are still really good. It's just, first off, they can't beat Houston, which is a problem. And they get into these matches in the knockouts, and it seems like they're getting meta-diffed hard. And I think a lot of the things and the players that they have, they're not in the same realm as they were before. I mean, there's a lot of things they're working through. They got a win against Paris, which was big for them, because you get that strength of schedule thing. If you're tied, Paris is in the knockouts. They're 3-1, so that helps you out. Now let's look at the standings really quick before we end this one. I'm just rambling on about teams in it. As it stands right now, your top 6 teams are Paris, Houston, Boston, Toronto, Dallas, and San Francisco in the West. Teams on the outside looking in that have not, there's a few teams that have not played all of their matches too involved in this. Dallas, the Defiant, the Uprising, and the Outlaws that are in, quote unquote, have not finished their matches up. And then right below the Shock, which you said is going to be a tough ask for them to get in at 2-2. We have Atlanta, Washington, and the Gladiators. I mean, London's 0-2. I don't think they're going to nut up and go 2-2 in this. But stranger things have happened, I guess. I think one of these teams below are going to, or two maybe, are going to go up into the next, get into it. Like Atlanta for sure. I don't have doubts. Their schedule going in to the next round, or next week, they have London, which we can pencil in as a win, and they got Boston, that's the decider. But the other teams involved, you got Washington and the Glads facing off against each other. You got Toronto and Dallas facing off against each other. Houston and Dallas facing off against each other. There's a lot of big matches coming up before we even get to the knockout rounds next week. It's going to be a crazy start of the week. And also, guys, do not forget, we have matches on Thursday. Boston-Houston kicks it off. That's going to set the tone for where we're at in NA. Now, let's talk about APAC really quick, because that's a jumbled mess, as we've been saying. We have a homestand in Shanghai, but the standings are, right now, we have Seoul at 3-1. I believe they're in. Shanghai 2-0, New York 1-1, Chengdu 1-1, and then you also have Philly and Hangzhou at 1-1. Guangzhou and the Valiant are out. So there's a lot of teams that are in the mix here. Obviously, we're gonna pencil Shanghai in here. Seoul is probably in at 3-1. The last two spots you got New York, Chengdu, and Philly and Hangzhou fighting it out. I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen because you can make all of the promises and all of the pencil in teams all you want underneath Shanghai in this division. Well, obviously outside of Seoul this week because they're at 3-1, they're probably in. But there are key matches all over the place. The unfortunate thing is the Valiant are involved in it too. So Chengdu and the Dragons get free wins this week because they have the Valiant. So that's dangerous for teams like New York and Hangzhou and Philly, where you have this factor of that going into it that you know they're going to get one win. I mean, Shanghai, I don't think anyone's worried about Shanghai. They know they're going to end up in the knockouts. The key factor is Hangzhou plays New York and they play Shanghai, and New York plays Philly and Philly plays Chengdu. So they're all kind of playing against each other. But I would say right now Hangzhou would be the team that would be out because they're playing Shanghai at home. And, you know, it's a tough ask going into the last week. And it all depends on what they do against New York. Who knows? We could end up seeing the same scenario as we did last time where we have New York, probably have Philly in there. Potentially, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's going to be crazy. But so that's the standings. All right, week 12 is in the books. All right, guys. We have been guaranteed no breadsticks in Vancouver for the Summer Showdown. I don't know what else they have to do, Pizza Hut, to try and get the free breadstick train rolling. But it's working out in their favor monetarily. They're not giving out free breadsticks all over the place. But even the bingo cards didn't work this week. It was close, but I don't know. Maybe they're going to have to come up with a more simplified version of the bingo card. I don't know. But it was close. That's a fun side story. At least it makes Vancouver games interesting to a point. You're checking off your bingo card. I was remotely interested in it too because I'm not a Pizza Hut person at all, and I'm not in Vancouver anywhere near it. But you know, hey, a chance for free breadsticks for the city of Vancouver. Why not? It didn't work out that way, but anyway, that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. We're gonna have an earlier episode this week. Wednesday, I'll have up a Wednesday night, probably the preview for the play-in or the qualifier games before the knockout rounds. And then Saturday, we'll do a quick one overnight give you my predictions for the Sunday knockouts and who's going to Hawaii for the Summer Showdown. And hopefully I'm not as wrong as I've been. I usually get one team, or two teams. It's usually generally Dallas and Shanghai because, well, yeah, that. You're dumb if you don't pick them, I guess. But we're going to have all that going on later on in the week. That's going to do it. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you in the next one.